My wellness journey. Everyone, I'm Matthew Cornwell with Get Taped here in Atlanta, Georgia, one of Atlanta's original audition taping services, which I co-own with my amazingly talented, beautiful wife and best friend, Brooke. Here she comes. Oh, before I dive in, I just wanted to point out the new merch that I'm sporting. We started doing some merch here at Get Taped. You can find the link in the show notes below to our website if you're interested in purchasing one, which, hopefully you would only do if you lived in Atlanta. But I'm not judging. And now on to our topic. My wellness journey. With the encouragement of my agent, Misty, at Houghton Talent here in Atlanta, I'm doing this video on my wellness journey. In all honesty, it felt initially like a little bit self-serving, but she made me realize that it could be inspiring to others, especially if you feel like you're in a rut creatively, physically, emotionally, spiritually, etc. For me, it was a confluence of many things that got me to where I am. But before I talk about that, let's give context about where I was. At the start of 2023, I was physically in an okay place. I had been steadily working out for the last several years, and I was hovering around 230 pounds, which had been my average weight over the last several years. And that was down from about an average of 240 pounds in the previous decade from 2008 to 2018. So I wasn't in a horrible place. I was on my way, but I was stagnating. Creatively, I felt uninspired. Despite the fact that I had a lot of irons in the fire, I just could not get the motivation to write, produce, create anything. Emotionally, it was a roller coaster as well. With some family stuff happening over the last few years, both Brooke and I were emotionally taxed. Add to that, I just felt like my neutral had become a lot less stable. Historically, I'm a nonchalant guy who would describe himself as being in a state of stable equilibrium. Imagine a bowl with a marble at the bottom of it. So if you try to excite that marble in any direction, i.e. try to get me out of my neutral emotional state, I would quickly return back to neutral. However, in recent years, I felt like the analogy was flipped, and I was in a state of constant unstable equilibrium. Imagine balancing a golf ball on top of a golf ball, and if you touch that top golf ball, i.e. some sort of emotional stimulus happens, then there's no going back. The spiral starts, and suddenly I'm feeling these extreme feelings of anger, resentment, sadness, anxiety, etc. And spiritually, I was just going through the motions and wasn't really cultivating any connection in that area. So what happened next? Well, a lot of things, and I want to give credit to each one. Side note, I'll save the most impactful one for last, so be sure to stick around for that. First, I did some life coaching with Joe Town of The Performer's Mindset. Spread out over 3 months, it was crucial to me unpacking a lot of stuff and identifying obstacles that I didn't really see that were in front of me before. And it cleared the way for a lot of growth to happen. Be sure to check out the show notes below for links to The Performer's Mindset. The programs they have over there is game-changing for your career. And in my case, it was life-changing. Thanks, Joe. Fist bump. In tandem with that, I was reading a lot. Some of it directly recommended by Joe, other stuff that I was finding on my own. Almost all of it nonfiction. But of all the books I read, including Clearer, Closer, Better, The War of Art, The 4-Hour Work Week, the one that had the most impact on me was Atomic Habits. Before reading it, my idea of setting new habits was a daunting task. My sleeping habits, my morning habits, my workout habits, my play habits, it all felt so ingrained. And the wisdom in this book was so deceptively simple, but it was so key to making lasting change. I highly recommend it, and there is a link in the show notes below. And serendipitously, I was also starting my obsession with Andrew Huberman of the Huberman Lab podcast. There it is, boom. Specifically, everything centered around the morning routine. And as I read the Atomic Habits book, it seemed to make the adoption of all these new habits that Huberman was talking about that much easier. Boom, synergy. I don't know. Plus, the fact that Huberman gives so much background on the science of all of his ideas. Spoiler alert, I am an engineer by education. It made me so curious about all these new things, which made it that much easier to stick with the new habits. So here's what I have started to implement in my morning routine over the last 6 months. I go to bed and wake up at the same time 7 days a week. Okay, I'm not batting 1,000 in that arena, but I'm so much more disciplined about always going to bed at midnight and always waking up at 8. And let me tell you, it makes waking up so much easier, especially if you had the habit of snoozing 3 to 4 times every morning. I also stopped going to my cell phone first thing in the morning when I wake up. I would sometimes sit in bed 30 to 45 minutes doom scrolling and just looking at nothing helpful on my cell phone before I ever even got out of bed. And so now I bolt straight out of bed when I wake up to my alarm, sometimes 15 minutes before my alarm, and go into a cold shower. Yeah, I spend 2 to 3 minutes every morning with the coldest setting on my shower. Now, there are a lot of benefits to cold exposure, which I invite you to explore with either Andrew Huberman or through other research that you might do. But suffice to say, it's better than caffeine. And speaking of, based on Huberman's research that he has shared, you should delay caffeine intake for 90 minutes after waking. So I've started to implement that as well. Now, after I've gone downstairs, the next thing I do is go outside and look for morning sunshine. If there's no direct sunshine, then I'll spend just more time outside in that cloudy day. But if I can find direct sunlight, I'll spend 3 to 10 minutes facing the sun, not looking directly at it, but facing that direct sunlight. The benefits are that it will set your circadian rhythm, which actually makes going to bed and waking up at those same times easier to do. And it just feels so good to be connected to nature first thing in the morning before I've ever looked at my phone and started that process of doom scrolling. So if you like to meditate, this is the perfect opportunity to find some sunshine first thing in the morning and just meditate for 5 to 15 minutes. For me, I actually do my Artist's Way morning pages during this time of morning sunlight, but more on that in a second. So after the morning sunshine, I come back inside and sit down at the workstation, but I don't want to just sit in a darkened room. Based on what Huberman has told me, again, I'm obsessed, you should turn on a bright overhead light while you are working first thing in the morning, like this. It's just a simple ring light that I have clamped that points overhead of my computer, and that just continues to reinforce the idea of having that morning sunlight, even though it's not nearly as bright as the sun. It helps keep waking me up, and, well, science. And the last part of the morning routine that I'll share is something that I learned from Huberman, which is that during the first 8 hours of wakefulness, you're more primed for left brain data-driven processes. So, whereas I used to give myself a lot of shame for not being creative in the morning, turns out my brain is more primed for working on spreadsheets. So this is when I do the books for Get Taped each day. And then I save the creative endeavors for later, maybe after my workout in the afternoon. And now there's so much more I've learned from Huberman and all the books I've read, but that's the gist of it that I wanted to share for this video. Now, switching to more of the physical weight loss journey, one of the big factors in that was Brooke introducing me to a supplement program called Plexus. We started with a 3-day reset back in January, and ever since then, I've been on a set of supplements that focuses on the gut microbiome. Now, I don't actually know all the science of what it's doing, but I do know that my sugar cravings reduced, my overall caloric intake went down, which really helped to jumpstart the weight loss. Check the show notes below for a referral link if you're interested in Plexus. And like I just mentioned, when combining that with my workout regimen, it really contributed to me dropping the 20 plus pounds that I'm benefiting from now. For context, I hadn't weighed below 220 pounds consistently in this millennium. Seriously. And for the past 3+ months, I've been hovering below 215 pounds, which is huge for me. And speaking of the workouts, I default mostly to Beachbody On Demand, which we subscribe to. I just cast it to this television right over here. This is my gym off camera over to the side. And I do that sometimes 4-5 days a week. Now, I used to do Lift 4, which was a 4-day-a-week workout program that focused a lot on weights, a little bit of cardio. But now in 2023, I've started doing the sequel, which is Lift More. And so I do think the more of Lift More definitely helped to jumpstart the weight loss as well. Next, my spiritual growth accelerated in concert with my creative growth. First, mad props again. Are we still saying that? I'm being told no, we're not raising the roof or saying mad props. But I do want to give credit once again to Joe Town for his help in restarting my creative engine. But along with that, I picked up The Artist's Way. And by pick up, I mean I pulled Brooke's copy off the shelf and started reading it. It not only has been creative espresso for me, but it also simultaneously jump-started my spiritual growth. After all, if you do believe in a creator, then you should believe that the creator created you to be creative. So those two sides of an artist are intertwined. Yeah. And so while my morning pages have been life-giving over these last couple months, I actually found my way back to scripture readings on a daily basis. Who knew? And so now I want to talk about the most beneficial element in this journey, which I teased at the beginning of the video. And that is, you guessed it, my amazingly talented, beautiful wife and best friend, Brooke. You see, whether or not you're married or have a roommate, you need a support system of some kind. You need a cheerleader. And despite all the trials that Brooke has been facing, not only in the last 6 months, but in the last few years, she truly has been my better half. So all of this to say, every aspect of my life has changed over the last 6 months. Each change was small, just like an atom. But just like the chain reaction that happens in a nuclear explosion, these changes compounded over time. And so I'm over 20 pounds lighter. Spiritually, I'm in a good place. Creatively, I am excited again about my quirky spy adventure series, Roger Espionager, which I'm about to launch a crowdfunding campaign for. Woohoo! And emotionally, I feel much more stable. I promise. Oh, and I started taking fish oil supplements, which I don't know if it's coincidence or not, but 2 or 3 days after I started taking them, my mood substantially improved. So it might be the magic elixir for me. Now, having said all that, and of course, I'm going to put all of those links in the show notes below, I still have a lot of work to do. I still eat way too much sugar for a human being. I had 2 gourmet donuts just today alone. I also eat a lot of fried food and processed food. And I'm not always as disciplined with some of the other health-related habits that I should be disciplined with. In other words, I still have a lot of obstacles to my long-term health and prosperity. But given the groundwork that I've laid with these new habits over the last 6 months, I feel empowered to tackle any of life's obstacles as they come. Because let's face it, as of right now, we're still in a writer's strike, a potential actor strike. It's not a prosperous time in the industry or for my career. So everything's not hunky-dory. I don't want to misrepresent where I am. This is all just to say that despite all of those things, all of those obstacles, I'm still finding a path forward. So thanks to Joe Town, Plexus, Andrew Huberman, The Artist's Way, Beachbody On Demand, Brooke, God, oh, and True Glow for the spray tan. And a corollary to this video is that if you're struggling in any of these arenas, creatively, spiritually, physically, emotionally, don't be overwhelmed by this video. Because as I think about all the things I've covered, it could feel overwhelming if you're in a rut in your personal journey. Start small. As my friend Joe Town would say, how we do small things is how we do all things. So if you're trying to start a new gym routine, then maybe today you just put on the gym clothes and that's it. That's a win. And then tomorrow you put on the gym clothes and then you drive by the gym, but you don't go into the gym. That's still a win. And BT dubs, I'm quoting straight from Atomic Habits right now. Start small. Those small wins will compound over time. And before you know it, you're posting thirst trap photos on Instagram. If you want more details on any of my journey or the folks I've credited, please leave a comment below. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on set.